So in this video, in which due to lighting constraints and ambiance, I'll suggest it be more audio than video, I want to answer the question, if someone I cared about in America or a Western country discovers that they have repressed trauma or undiagnosed PTSD or diagnosed PTSD. If you're in a terrain of emotional overwhelm, of confusion, of some feelings of perhaps insanity or deep grief or anxiety, I want to suggest a path towards sanity and well-being from this moment forward. And it's open for improvisation and adaptation. No one's going to do this perfectly and may not even be able to. I would say, number one, get a dog. Form a bond with a loving, dependable mammal with whom you can feel and experience affection, because the availability of dependable human mammals in this capacity it's about 10% probable. But there is an 80% or more probability that you can bond with an animal mammal of your choice. Could be a cat, but I suggest a dog because of the mutuality of need for affection, which is a very important healing aspect. And I'm just out of the tub, so that's the dripping and stuff. Form a bond with an animal. And there's a very important reason for this, because as you go into this territory that is rife with political and social insanity, because the culture is insane in this terrain, you want a stable set point to come back to. And the odds of a human being in this culture being that for you are about 10%, particularly if you do not have one yet. If you have a safe, loving partner who will go into this terrain with you, you are ahead of the game. And way to go. But if you don't, the odds of you securing one quickly, about 10%. The odds of you securing a mammalian friendship with an animal, a dog in particular, the logistics and social norms, very high. You want a stable set point of sanity. You want a mammal to be kind, present, there for you, stable, warm, and affectionate as you go through all of your feelings. Now, surprising as it may seem, we are in a culture in which a dog is more likely to do that than a human being by a large statistical margin. If you have freedom of mobility and you have financial means, etc., I found some stability with masseuse in Thailand and to a lesser extent in the Philippines, for a present, calm, nurturing, embracing presence in the midst of all of this unwinding. It's priceless. It's absolutely priceless. And a dog can give it to you if you're willing to receive it. Number 2, with that support in place, possibly with the additional support. Now, I would do it in this order because the Western therapeutic ethic is profoundly sociopathic when it comes to trauma. I've worked with more than 30 practitioners, spent well over $150,000, and not one practitioner in all of that has ever said, I understand that you enter terrain in which you cannot deal with alone, in which the crimes and the hurt and the pain that's been done to you is too intense for you to be with that alone. I know that. I know you're going into this journey with me. And so my commitment, to the best of my ability, is to be there for you as and when you need me, and we're going to design the therapeutic container around that. And we're not going forward until it's safe for you. No. See you in 2 weeks. See you in a week. See you when I'm done with my vacation. See you when I'm done leading this workshop. See you when I'm done. See you when it's good for me. For a block of time that's good for me, in a way that's I know how to do. And don't step outside that bound. Because we all know you're here to pay my bills. I'm not here to be in service at the depth that it actually takes to make a breakthrough for you. That's why I would say the human therapeutic container comes second. First the dog. First the horse. I could never find it from a cat if I wanted to, but if you can, wonderful. I say that just because cats are fickle, they don't jump up on you. They're hard to cuddle at night with intensity. And when you're in absolute desperation, you may need to squeeze hard before you feel a release from that ache. So first the dog, then the therapeutic container. Then start doing diagnosis. Now you may have to do this yourself, and I've unfortunately found that I do. So take the highly sensitive person test to find out whether you're HSP or not. Read the book, The Highly Sensitive Person, and learn how to take care of that part of yourself if you are. Teach others around you to take care of that part if you are. Take the ACE score, the Adverse Childhood Experiences test. It's just 10 questions, but it will tell you the level of risk, which basically goes up by 10% for every question you answer. If you answer 10 out of 10, you are incredibly high risk for an incredible amount of mental, emotional, physical dis-ease in this life without healing, treatment, understanding. Get a sense of your risk. Now you know. This is to the degree that you need to respect yourself. Now it's amplified 3 times if you're in the highly sensitive person category. That's why I included it. It's just a 10-minute test, highly sensitive person test. If you know this, great. If you don't know it, If you're high risk and highly sensitive, this increases your risk significantly. And the degree to which you are at risk is to the degree that you need to be kind and compassionate in advance of your emotions becoming unfrozen. What I mean is, many of us, myself included, numbed the pain because it was too overwhelming. But it's a little bit like having Novocaine in your jaw. If you numb the area, you can bite it and you can do more damage and you don't know it because you're numb. So what this is telling you is to be kind to yourself, whether or not you can feel any pain. Because odds are, if it's big, you feel nothing at all. If you do, you're one of the lucky ones. Because you can follow the trail into the wound. Number 3. Unfortunately, in this day and age, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, you may be better served by gathering resources yourself and taking this into a therapeutic container. Now, if you are one of the fortunate ones who finds a good trauma specialist, who sees you, who takes a stand for you, who makes it their commitment to see that you are safe. You may be able to let them guide you into this terrain. I have not found that person because I've been highly recommended to what I've been told are some of the best. I can just say that from my own experience, most of the depth and nuance of compassion and understanding has come from reading. So that, let me arm you with that list. Number 1, Healing Trauma on Audible or book form by Peter Levine. Number 2, The Body Keeps the Score on Audible, book form, Kindle. Number 3, The Body Never Lies by Alice Miller. Number 4, When the Body Says No. Now from this point on, trauma, gather resources, gather understanding, read poetry, listen to Robert Bly, Iron John, Robert Bly and Marion Woodman. These dances with the wound. Understand the terrain that you're in mythologically, psychologically, spiritually, socially, politically. You're smack dab in the middle of a giant wound that has nothing to do with you. This wound infested and infected you from the outside. You were born open and innocent. This wound has nothing to do with you. And healing it is your gift to the culture that conceived you, that formed you and gave it to you. A culture that in many cases has done its best to scapegoat those who seized onto the wound and showed its symptoms most severely. To shame and scapegoat you And yet, this wound has nothing to do with you. And your job is to give it back by understanding, by feeling, by embodying, by refusing to let it dictate. But to do that, you are going to have to face pain like you have never known. Because when you realize the depth of the cut and just how little of your essential self has sprouted after being cut off at the stump, it's a hard thing to feel. It's a hard thing to deal with, particularly when you understand this is not your wound. This was never about you. It has to do with 100,000 other individuals throughout time, but not you. Giving it back and noticing all the different places that still want to give it to you. You have to see the source, code by line of code, give it back. It's not yours. It's not who you are. It's not who you want to be. It's not your nature. It's who you've become in an extraordinary amount of compression from multiple sides on multiple layers, just grinding this infection deep within you to a point where it becomes hard. It's like the rocks get embedded in the flesh and it's hard to tell the difference between what's flesh and what's rock, and it's all sore and pussy. That's the wound. And it's not yours. It never was. It never was. But the flip side of that is it's no one else's either. The wound is an illusion, a delusion, a code built up upon layer and layer of fear and panic and language. It's a disease that is in part embedded in the duality of language. It's got a life of its own, but it's not yours. Even though you've made it your own and reinforced it many times, it's not yours. Read the books. Be with the dog. Extend out and see how stable the human support is for you on this journey. Be prepared for nothing on the human level. I want to challenge you next to consider psychedelics. Because psychedelics dissolve boundaries. And if you're numb, there's an ocean of grief that's waiting just over there for the culturally formed partition to break and for you to feel all of those feelings. Those feelings that will overwhelm you and set you free. Those feelings that have washed in like an unwelcome tide and that need to wash out again, leaving you empty, leaving you free. Go gently into this terrain. Terence McKenna is not the most gentle, but he has a poetry and a kindness, a courage to explore. You can listen to 100 hours on YouTube. I did. Read James Orrock, The Tryptamine Palace. Understand entheogens. Spend time unlearning the culture through their eyes. Spend time unlearning the culture through their eyes. They may not be your eyes, but they're less poisonous eyes in many ways. Sometimes it's just difference. Any single message that has a monopoly becomes toxic. It's like eating potatoes, it becomes toxic. A little variety, a little biodiversity, a vantage point of view and perspective breeds health. And I want you to go very gently into this terrain. 35 milligrams of very safe and secure. I mean, a bit of an oxymoron in a country where you'll be thrown off in jail for doing any of this. It's a joke. But go gently. Get a scale. $29 on Amazon. Get a scale. 30 milligrams of MDMA. It's enough. And here's what I want you to do with your dog present. I want you to write a focus. I invite you. It feels right to you. To open to the path that I would give to myself and to my best friend. If meeting them for the first time and wanting to learn, is there trauma here? What's going on? How can I help? Now, I would also, perhaps prior to this, establish a meditation practice. Visualization. I think I actually would rewrite this script. The channel Lazarus, with all of his faults and blessings and the whole politics and all that, has produced a tape called Healing the Child Within, Healing the Adolescent Within. Healing shame, psychic contracts of pain, healing shame, adolescent shame, healing adult shame. These 6 tapes are good primers. The meditations, powerful, suggestive, pattern-setting meditations that mean that your openings have a probability field of, in the absence of any other morphogenetic field, to use a term by Rupert Sheldrake, have a tendency to go a certain way. You're carving the neuronal pathways in a meditation practice. There's many things I have issues with about the channel Lazarus and the company Concept Synergy, but not these tapes for these reasons. Healing the child within, healing the adolescent within, go through the process. Love your little boy, your little girl. Recreate the past. Recreate the past. Do that work. It changed my life 30%. Now that's huge over a lifetime. 30%. Huge. Listen to the shame tapes. Understand shame. Understand that shame is a trauma. You are now in the top percent, top 1%, 2%, in terms of setup for success. Now, that may not be saying a hell of a lot in our culture, but it's saying something. It's saying that you can position yourself to be in the top 2% of preparedness. Set those grooves. Healing the child within. Healing the adolescent within. Shame 1, 2, 3, and 4. You've opened up a field that gives you, just there with those tapes, maybe a 50% better odds. That's huge. That is huge. We're talking about the most toxic, devastating wound of our culture, of our time frame. A wound that, to the degree that we heal it or don't, may be the deciding point in our species' survival over the next 500 years. Now, I believe we will survive, and I believe it is because of people like you who have the courage to face this wound and the kindness to heal it, to give it back to the culture that tried to give it to them. I would do this work now. You can listen to my review, largely a questionable review about Lazarus, if you want to have a sense of the ins and outs and all the the things like that. I talk about it because in my long-term relationship with Lazarus, there's been many things that have felt painful and lonely and crazy-making. But the resonance that is Lazarus has always had integrity with itself and integrity with an uplifting field. And so to the degree that you can allow that resonance to lift you without being tugged down into the crazy-making aspects of concept synergy or whatever, the company and all the stuff around it, you will be blessed by that resonance. Get a couple 100 hours of meditation under your belt, along strong, favorable, positive lines. Lines existing of surrendering to deep love, of championing the innocent, of championing yourself. Create strong neuronal pathways. And watch your life blossom and integrate that. Make the changes in your life to blossom and open up. This may keep you going for a couple of years. But at some point, you may find that it's plateaued. You may find there's still reservoirs of emotion that are numb. It doesn't feel entirely real, that it's just words. You may feel alone. One doorway and possibility, explore crystal consciousness. Another, Reiki, energy work, this kind of thing. Lazarus is also a master of crystal consciousness, but I would suggest spending some time with crystals, with an open heart, and seeing whether or not you resonate enough to actually feel. Now, I say this as a great crystal lover, but for, at least 10 years of being, quote, into crystals, I felt absolutely nothing. It was just a complete head game. Crystals are amplifiers of positive energy. I want that, so let's have a crystal. It's not a feeling thing. You either have that at your present level or not. I would say that until you do, don't take it too seriously. But when you do, it's pretty big. Opening up to the love of a being, of a consciousness contained in a crystal that's 200 million years old. It's a kind of energy you will never receive from a human being. It's a kind of energy you will never receive from a human being. It's consciousness on an epic scale. Embodied consciousness, 200 million years old. It's ancient. The time frames are so much different from our modern life, and that's part of its stability and its healing, its groundedness. Consider that, but don't pursue it. Consider it. It's a possible adjunct for maybe 10% of you. It was the right thing for me. Do that work, integrate it into your reality. Build your relationship with a support person once a month, twice a month. Take the well-being assessment that I've written. It's the questionnaire I wish every therapist had given me and no one did. Take that questionnaire. Give it to your healing practitioner. Now, you may find that they need educating. Challenge them to be educated. Have them read the books. It may seem a little odd, and in some ways it is, but the reality is healers, therapists, just know what they know. Not what you know, not all there is to know, just what they know. And if that isn't the right thing, you can look for another one. That's probably the most wonderful thing to do, is look for another one. Or you can see, you can ask. Maybe you can go to a therapist and say, "Do you want to watch this video? I've read this, this path I'm choosing to follow. You want to watch it? Oh, I don't want to watch it. Okay, well then, goodbye." It's very important in this deep spiritual work that everyone involved knows with absolute clarity that this is priceless work, and that money, if it is involved at all, is merely a logistical way of reciprocating and sustaining one another. It is not the reason. You are not there to serve your healer unless that service is honored and graciously received. You are not there to spend your time and your money to serve your healer because they don't know what they're doing. If they don't, it's up to them to honor that off the clock. You can invite them. Do you want to take some time? I don't think you're able to help me fully. Do you want to take some time to grow with me? Most won't. You may have to keep looking around. It's heartbreaking to say this to you because I've been in that position. You finally get to a point where you can just talk and have some rapport and some acceptance. And the person doesn't want to grow with you and doesn't have the skill to take you to the next level. But they're at least kind and a good listener. I spent $100,000 with such a man. It never took me to the next level. It's painful. Realizing time after time all this treading water without getting anywhere. And this is where I'd suggest coming back to the question. I would do the good therapy if you can possibly find it. I would find that safe person. And I would find an integrative person before beginning on the psychedelics, if possible. Now, good books for them to read: Acid Test, Food for the Gods, True Hallucinations, Tryptamine Palace. These are good books for them to read, for them to be able to support you, whether they will or not. Again, you question their level of commitment. If they're not interested in educating themselves in some of the leading books about consciousness, which is the ultimate medicine. Consciousness is the ultimate medicine. I'd encourage you to be patient during that 2-year period of growing, but anticipate a dry spell and putting out feelers, gentle feelers. Can you create someone who really sees you in this area of psychedelic healing, who's not interested in the money, who understands the terrain, who has some good therapeutic credentials, who has, preferably, a stated sense of protocols. Here's what I do. Here's my commitment. Here's my practices. Here's why. These are my boundaries. Someone that can articulate. It's wonderful if they will write a book. It's a great gift if they will write a book to help you see them. Help you understand the world in their language. Now, this is a bit of a double-edged sword because ultimately you want to understand the world in your language. And this person, anyone who feeds you their vocabulary, their language, and their meanings is ultimately a bit of an obstruction. But what you want to do is you want to use their nuanced distinction, their intelligence and presence, to take your consciousness into the pinpointed terrain that you're exploring, from which point your consciousness and your perception can diverge, can differentiate. So you use their distinctions and their perceptions to enter the zone, but then allow your consciousness, once there, to reframe the zone in your language. And be true to that. If they say the colors of the rainbow and the chakras and the this and that and the other, and all you see is a big pattern of red. So their stuff goes out the window, and you start getting to know this red color and these patterns, and you become intimate with that terrain and with that perceptual ability. If they are humble and they are strong in their self, they will respect and seek to integrate your language with theirs. If they are not humble, or if they are insecure, they will attack you for challenging, because there's this paradox in a dualistic mentality where we think things are either or. They're not. Most things are not either or at all. They're and or. Lots of probability fields. But we're taught, if I'm right, you're wrong, that kind of thing. So that blind spot leads many insecure people to feel that if you're seeing this and you're having that, and they're seeing this and they're diverging, that you've got to be suppressed so that they can be right. Of course, it's not true. You want to find someone who will embrace your language, your information, your feedback. Ideally, you will both grow from this experience. Ideally, you will both grow from this experience because they will learn to see the world through your eyes, and you will learn to see the world through your eyes and their eyes. And this gives depth perception. My eye, your eye, our eyes equals depth perception, equals increased dimensionality. That's what depth perception is. It's bringing in the third dimension, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, the eighth, the ninth. Infinite dimensions come as we co-calibrate individual perceptions in multiple ways. I want this for you. I want your perception to be honored at the same level as your healer, your shaman, because it's yours. You may take practice. It's like riding a bicycle. Start practicing, start seeing, start noticing, start exploring. Give yourself permission to be you, to see, to think, to feel, to know what you know, to pay attention. When the shaman, when the healer, when the therapist says this, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. It's bullshit. Mumbo jumbo, it's just gibberish. When they say this, I know what they're talking about. So this is mumbo jumbo to me. This is intelligent to me. When they talk about this energy or aura field or this or that, the other, if you're in some of the alternative fringes, and I hate the fact that they're fringes, but in our culture they are, and so that if you're in that, if you don't know what the hell they're talking about, the only chakra you can feel is your heart chakra, then know that that's real for you. That the other ones, as far as you're concerned, don't exist. just words at this point. Pay attention to what's real for you that someone's saying and what isn't. And don't believe it just because they say it. Many times you'll find they're just parroting stuff that they've never felt either. Ask, if you're hanging around in these circles, you'll probably have had more than 200 people say something about chakras. Now, if you ask all 200 of them, have you ever seen a color? Or is you just looking at that book? Have you ever looked at another person's body and seen brilliant green in their heart? Or you just said that because someone else said that, because someone else said that, someone else said that. If you're going to give it a color, why not green? But why not something else? Challenge. What is fully conscious and embodied and what's just parroting language and stuff? And what you'll probably find if you ask all 200 people, have you ever seen a green color? Like, I've never seen a green color in someone's heart. Have you? Well, ask everyone who talks about the green color of the heart chakra. Do they just know it because they read it in Deepak Chopra's book? Because they read it in the Vedic texts? Because they read it in the Buddhist text? Do they just know it because that's the way it is? Because they've chosen that author or whatever? Or do they know it in some visceral way? If there's drawings and diagrams and geometric shapes drawn, have they ever seen any of those shapes? Have they ever felt those chakras at all? So we're in this very strange terrain where our energetic bodies are so numb and dissociated for many of us that we haven't felt a damn thing, period, ever. And yet we're so enamored with our mental masturbation from language that we can rattle off, a 10th chakra phenomena like that, sentence for sentence, without experiencing a goddamn thing. And this is how, it's not that it's bullshit. The bullshit is that when we can't tell the difference between words and actual visceral experience, and we can't tell the difference in ourselves or in the person we're talking with, when our energy healer is, I call in the energies of the South. It's like, do you feel them? No, I just read that's the thing to do in my shaman book. Well, fuck that. Do you feel anything here at all? No, not really. Well, then why don't we just have a chat and you can save your calling in these mysterious figures for some other time when you actually feel them. Or why don't we have a talk about how numbing our Western culture is, and let's do it off the clock, since you're not feeling anything more than I am. I didn't pay you $125 an hour just to recite the directions of this and that book. So get real and challenge your, quote, teachers. Anyone who tells you this, that, and the other. It's an incredible amount of quick, do-good, fixing, prescriptive, without diagnosis, kind of quick fix recommendations out there. Just try this. The person that tells you to eat raw food, are they around when you start farting? It tastes disgusting. You want to vomit, and nothing good comes of it, and you've spent twice as much money for that crap as something else. Are they around for that? No. They're off recommending it to someone else without any consequences. They're not paying the bill. So it's really helpful if you're with someone that's actually really interested, and that's also a good way to know, I want you to have someone who's giving you advice, that actually wants to know how it's working for you. And they're as interested to know if it doesn't work as if it works, and they're not going to blame you for it. That they're going to take responsibility. That maybe they gave the advice without doing a diagnosis, without fully understanding the situation, without understanding the complexity that what might be ideal for one person is terrible for another. And that's on them. They didn't diagnose the situation and gave bad advice. They're actually not a very safe person. The last person you want to be having advice from, and they're the last person you should be paying to have advice from. You need someone to do a diagnosis of the imbalances and to be able to put it into words. Here's my sense of who you are. Or I don't know who you are, but here's my sense of a protocol that will have these effects. I do or don't have any background or statistical data on how that works with someone like you. I am or I am not interested in learning about you personally. I had an acupuncturist, started sticking needles in me. I felt very fuzzy and hazy. I felt disoriented and dissociative for the next 2 days. Did she care? No. She just wanted to do it again. She had no idea. She implied it was probably my fault. She didn't ask any questions that would give her an idea that, maybe repressed trauma is getting stirred up by this. Let's teach you about this. Let's do this. Maybe we have to slow down here. Maybe we have to stop your brain from fighting this because you need to learn this. No. I'm just going to stick needles in you. So this is the level of stupidity that we are in as a culture today. We can send a person to the moon, but we can't learn how and why one person feels what they do. It's an adventure. It's a challenge. But know who cares and who can help, and gather data. I'd say this also in this journey. Do not spend money on more than one session without experiencing value and believing in it. Not just in your mind, but viscerally. You can waste a lot of money with people saying this works in 6 months, this works in 3 months. You go to 10 of them, 20 of them, maybe one does. But that's not fair that you pay for all 10 or all 20 who make that promise. Challenge them. Hold them on the line. I'll give you half now, and you're going to refund this to me if it doesn't work out in 6 months. You don't believe in it so much now, do you? Why not? What's your data? What's your basis for being so confident about this? Do you have any legs to stand on here? You just want my money. You just would like it to be the case that your protocol works, but it doesn't. Don't pay their price. Don't pay for their ignorance. It's not right. You're trying to claw yourself out of a hole to heal a wound that isn't yours. And the last thing you need is to be carrying the burden of incompetent healers that don't know what they're doing. That's not right. Doesn't matter how nice they are, how white their teeth are, anything like that. Are they taking you to the next level in understanding, paradigm shifting, healing? Try and find someone who's willing to grow with you. This is a great partner to then start your psychedelic journey with. Now, why start a psychedelic journey at this point? Because to quote Terence McKenna, who I realize I was always irritated when people quoted him before I learned anything about him. I was, totally dismissive of the whole psychedelic thing, and I just love it. I just love it that I was wrong. But to quote Terence McKenna, why would you ever think that you could gain enlightenment by listening to another monkey? Who said that monkeys, 200,000 years out of the trees, were supposed to understand it all? You're not going to learn it from another human being. And this was said to Terence by a mushroom. A mushroom who, from our point of acculturation, is so beneath us, we would never consider. There's these stories in Russian fairy tales, they're beautiful, about the three brothers. And the father always puts his trust in the eldest. The impossible quest. The oldest son is sent out on the impossible quest, and he disappears. No sign of him. And the middle son, sent out on the impossible quest. Go capture the firebird. He disappears. And then Ivan the Fool, the third son, the dunce, the one that no one thinks can or will amount to anything, says, Father, Father, please let me go on this impossible quest. His father says, no, if your two smart, worldly wise and handsome and powerful and rich brothers failed at this test, you cannot win at this quest. It's impossible. And Ivan keeps begging, please, please, I need the right to earn my own reputation, Just grant me your blessing, Father, please. Finally, the father gives up. He gives him an old nag, a few crusts of dry bread. But the fool, Ivan, diverges from the older two in every story because he does one thing different. There's a beggar woman. There's a fox. There's a rabbit. There's a mouse. There's some creature that everyone in society dismisses as being useless, small, nothing at all. Not worth the time for someone so important as Ivan's older brothers. And when the old woman begs for a loaf of bread, the two older brothers kick her hands out of their way and say, out of my way, you old hag, out of my way. We're on an important mission. Don't you know who we are? We're the middle brother. We're the eldest brother. We've got important missions to do with our father. Out of our way. They reject the assistance and the request of the socially insignificant. And they don't get very far. But Ivan, with his little crust of bread, feeds the animals, feeds the old woman. And something interesting happens. That woman, that mouse, that fox says, "Tell me about your quest." And Ivan does. Because he's too foolish to have been trained to dismiss the insignificant. He's too foolish to know the difference between the important and the unimportant, between the profane and the divine. He tells the old woman, the mouse, the pig, whatever captures the least worthy within the culture, he tells them his quest. And they say, "Aha, you want to be careful about this. When you come to the next village, there's a sorcerer. He'll invite you to have sex with his daughter. But don't do it. When you're sleeping drunk in the bed, they'll stab you like your brothers. They'll do this, they'll do this. It's a trap." Or they'll say, "Thank you, you have helped us. You may have need of us. Here's how you call us when you need help." And suddenly you discover the truth in this story. These beautiful parables of Russian fairy tales, the truth that every single part of creation, every part of humanity, that a hardened criminal in solitary confinement can teach you things that no one else can teach you. That a rat can teach you values that no purebred hound can teach you. And that if you are too stupid to learn, you will fail the task. So Ivan the Fool's path diverges from the older brothers. And ultimately, with the help of his allies, he achieves the impossible goal. In political correct terms, she achieves the impossible goal. From our eyes, a mushroom is nothing. A soulless mechanical spore. That mushroom has been around for hundreds of millions of years. That mushroom can travel in spores through space. that mushroom is not bound to the culture or anything you know. That mushroom doesn't know the difference between political correct and incorrect, what's lovable and what's not lovable. And the consciousness of a mushroom is not bound to the limited beliefs we project upon it. Terence McKenna is both the older brother and the fool. If you read his work, follow his journey, you will find both faces. The dismissive, arrogant, westernized older brother, and the fool who will dedicate his life to share the wisdom of a mushroom, and who will pay that mushroom more respect than any of the older brothers could possibly conceive their way to doing. And it is the fool in La Chorrera. It is the fool who learns everything. We humble ourselves. We acknowledge our short time on this planet. When we submit to the partnership in consciousness, giving a mushroom a human body, giving consciousness, human consciousness, the doorway of a mushroom. This is a path to lead gently into. Gently. I started with 1/20 of one mushroom, chewing it on an open-ended afternoon, talking with a lover, noticing the effects, noticing the partnership that emerges when we co-create a level of consciousness that neither can create alone. A partnership. Mushrooms feed on the gifts of cow dung. We give them cow dung. They give us knowledge. Is it a knowledge our brain is ripe to receive, is ready to receive, is capable of receiving, is welcoming of? Or are we the older brothers? But I would challenge you and invite you to see the beauty of field mice, the gifts of insects, of little birds, the wisdom in the old folk stories, the wisdom of the fool. And see how it threads its way and down. In a way impossible to imagine with a lineal, westernized mind. And yet, such a perfect pattern. This is a darkened path. There's a lot of sorrow. There's a lot of deep misunderstanding. There's a lot of horror and treachery on this path, which is being burned at the stake. Horrors committed in the name of the Christian gods. Horrors to this day. In the name of our government, it's a very burnt path. And yet it is arising. Science has been on a mission to destroy religion for some time. And good on it when it comes to the hypocritical power structures that consume innocent individuals to feed themselves. But science was created by consciousness. Descartes, one of the great founders of science, received his first scientific direction to conquer nature with measurements and numbers from an angel in a vision. Science can do what it will with religion, but it cannot conquer or hem in the consciousness that gave rise to it, and which has given rise to more than 10,000 languages, cultures, and the endless creativity of consciousness. And while we're drifting a little bit far afield, I want to give you a little bit of a flavor of this terrain and the delicacy, because you will be standing on charred wood, on burnt ground that has been desecrated by terror, by rage, by countless abuses, by profound disrespect. And yet there is a still gentleness at the core of this journey that cannot be touched. It is the fragility of the green Easter grass, sprouting fresh on the burnt meadow, greener, more lush and beautiful, more distinctive in its color than it might have been had the prairie never burned. And it is on this foundation that this phoenix of consciousness, this partnering with science, consciousness willing to partner with science, a science not yet quite willing to partner with consciousness, awaits. And it's your birthright to walk through those gates, the gates of Eleusis, the gates that Plato, that Aristotle, that the founders of our Western civilization walked through. The Eleusinian mysteries, tramped, forgotten, stomped out, macheted to bits more than 1,000 times, and yet a truth that cannot die, burns in the heart of our DNA, waiting to be kindled by the humility to seek counsel with those who have come before, with plants. With the plants that are our ancient ancestors, with plants. Go gently. Find wisdom and humility. You can let go of the fools, or rather the foolish, who are not yet ready to be fools. They're the ones casting critical and obnoxious remarks at me as we speak. Go on that journey. Be humble to what you don't know that you don't know. And emerge new. Let a you spring up from that burnt field that is untainted by the sins of the culture, by the insanity and absurdity and the disease and imbalances of the culture. Let an image come that is your true birth, your second birth. First, you are born to your parents. Second, you are born to your culture. The third birth is your birth. The third birth is yours. But it does not come lightly. It comes only, often, chased by the terrors of actual death. It comes only when one surrenders the self of the parents and their wound, one surrenders the self of the culture and is willing to go naked. Go naked into the unknown. Into the unknown. This is the third birth. Are you ready? Have you been so hoodwinked by the lies, the cowardice, the machinery of science and money and machines? you've gotten dizzy and never been given the place to be still, to face who you are. It's the only way through the wound. It's the only way through. You can't fix the past or the culture. It's not fair and never was. It's not right. And yet you, going through this door, willing to let your skins fall behind you, can find something true, beautiful, good, that may or may not have a label, but is free in the boundless myths of imagination, in the true landscape of possibility, and in its freedom wild and healthy, clear, beautiful. In this world often alone. And yet, going down this path, you will not walk alone, but with giants. Giants, you are humble enough to recognize that before you did not know were there. They walk beside you now. Your shepherds, your protectors, your partners, your allies, who you are becoming, who you are before you took this form. They are there, as they have always been, waiting to take your hand. Not the older brothers, not the middle brothers, not the jealous and the envious sisters, but the innocent little one, Ivan the Fool, the youngest daughter, the daughter who will settle for nothing but magic, for a feather from Finis the falcon, who will settle for nothing less than joy. You hold the key. You hold the key for all of us, because when you turn and open it, the light comes in and frees your stupid brothers from their madness. You and you alone, fool, lead the blazing trail home. You, in your mad and beautiful glory, burning the candle at both ends, lighting the landscape in a cacophony of Roman candles. Usher in the presence we all need to go home, to find our way home. In most populations, it's less than 2%. 2% of any group is ready. 2%. Are you one of those 2%? The beauty is, you get to decide. You get to decide. You don't have to have anything. You have to let go of things. You've got it all. You've got way too much. Can you let go? Can you let go? So what do we do next? Maybe you're already there. Maybe the tide of grief and shame that was flooding the sands with the tar-rich sediments of human waste has gone back out to sea. And you've identified the source of the toxins. But realized it's all just God anyway. It's just you on a big adventure. What next? I would challenge you to learn about love. There's 5 kinds of love. There's attachment. I need you. Whether that's good for you, bad for you, whatever, I need you. There's lust. I want the pleasure your body brings me. Doesn't matter where you're at, what you need. I want you. There's my feeling of love, of beauty, my feeling of wonder. Joy and presence. It has nothing to do with where you're at. Just the joy I have in seeing who you are. There's alliance, a flow, a goodwill, without interference, a letting be. And then there's one more kind of love. It's the commitment, the discipline, and the choice to be loving. This is the only one that is all about the other. What do they need? What do they want? What scares them? What hurts them? What causes them pleasure? What makes them feel exalted? that makes them feel cherished and sacred? What does a good friend look like to them? It's often very disappointing. They want you to keep your distance. Being loving is about being of service in the most disappointing ways. They don't want to look at themselves. So you hold space for that. Find someone to love, to be loving towards, who embraces and welcomes your love. The others, fine. But your commitment to be loving, to show up in their world in a way that creates safety and strength, courage, support for who they are, who sees them, and who waits for them at the edge, waiting for them to see themselves, waiting for them to know. Be there, waiting, present, engaging, challenging. What would make you feel loved today? What would be a peak experience for you? Letting go if they don't want to go there. Holding presence. You can't do this when you're an addict. You can't do this, you can't do this when addiction is primary, which all addictions are. They come ahead of everything else. You can't heal addiction without healing trauma. You can't heal trauma without help. You can't heal shame without help. So you need help and you need love. Lots and lots of love. Again, without needing to buy into any of the dreams or mental gibberish or whatever about it. The energy that is Lazarus has channeled a book called The Crisis Tape. It's a beautiful doorway into a small taste of that love. A little bit of MDMA in the right setting. Read acid test first. Get a dog. Study the field. But when you are grounded and safe in that domain, maybe 30 milligrams of MDMA. Half a mushroom, maybe 3/4. Find a gentle entry. To seek the help on the other side. The help that is waiting in the dimensions we are walled off from in normal consciousness. That is waiting there to love us, to help us out of the burning building, to lift us from the fire, to give our soul and spirit safe refuge for a timeless hour, returning them whole, as in the gifts on the other side of a dream. And once you find that help, Hold it sacred. Hold it sacred. Let it be more real than real. Open to it. Open to it. Like a flower. Receive its scent. Receive its scent. And you are on your way, my friend. You have no more use for human counsel. Nor should you seek it, but rather as colleagues and friends, as fellow travelers, reflecting on the nuanced experiences of others, holding true to your own. Remember, there's nothing wrong with you. Every dis-ease, every imbalance, every trauma and every wound was given to you. And your greatest gift to evolution is to heal that wound and give it back. And to be who you are. Someone you may not yet have met. Someone beautiful. Someone true. Someone good. Someone worthy of loving. Someone worthy of adoring, worshiping, loving, knowing, standing by, dying for. Someone worthy of that love. And you are now fully human.